What's up, community? Hope everybody's having a amazing Thursday. And I am testing out this new software, so hoping this is working. Giving it a try. I've been building this studio during this time, and I'm playing around, having fun, and just kind of testing to see if this works. But thought it would be a valuable topic. I wanted to talk about for my Brotherhood Mastermind. It's a 12-month mastermind. I have a number of men in. They're all from my ERT retreats. And we have this amazing guest, Eva Clay. She is epic. She's a good friend of mine. What's up, sister? Testing out this new software. The only thing that's not working is my camera. So I still have this not so good camera because my DSLR won't work. But it's all coming soon. Good stuff coming. So I wanted to share this because it was so powerful. We have this amazing guest, Eva Clay, come on. She's been a sexual therapist for a long time, and her story really landed with a lot of the men. She does a lot of sexual therapy for couples, and it was so helpful to get feedback from all the men. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're liking it. So anybody, you'll be seeing, I have all these different brands. So I was like, how do I organize my content? So this is a really cool software I found. I could change the logo here, depending on what I'm doing. I can play around with my new kind of branding topics, cool things around it just to make it easier. Yes, this is my mountain man beard in full effect. This is what happens when you're in COVID for a couple months. So wanted to share this topic because I really found it valuable. The guys in my mastermind were taking notes the whole time, and we had a follow-up call, and it was a game changer. So I just want to share a couple highlights that we got from Eva Clay. Give her a big shout out. I'll tag her in this post as well in case you have questions. But one of the things she said, and we're going to get to this in a second, she gave away a secret, which is a woman's primary attraction to a man. I'm going to tell you in just a second. But first, there's a couple things that came up, and I wanted to paint the scenario, and so we could dig into this. A lot of times, I have guys come to my retreats. We do all this work on leaning into the wounds, learning to identify what our core wounds are, which typically end up being not enough or abandonment. Once we identify the wounds, we learn to go into the body and start to feel those emotions and learn to regulate our nervous systems. It's really uncomfortable. It takes a lot of work because you're used to you touch a stove and you get burned. So learning to actually lean into the uncomfortability is not so fun. And how it applies, not just in healing our wounds, is most effectively in relationships, is what I'm discovering. Reason being, what happens in a relationship, we are triggering each other's wounds. So what's ended up happening is we're connecting with the loved one. We're getting activated or in an unregulated place. Something may trigger us from our day or our spouse or something, and our core wounds get triggered, and we are offline, and we're in an activated place. And then we get triggered and maybe fire things off at our spouse. Our spouse may fire things back at us. And now we're both actually these adults acting as children, highly triggered. And what I've been finding is so powerful is the men is now that we're investigating this. For example, our last homework assignment was, okay, what are your signals that you're in an activated place? And I'll be unpacking a lot more of the science and the psychoeducation, and there's all science that backs us up. But when we get in a really activated place, we go offline. So I'll do a quick example that makes sense. Where's my hand? Okay, so think of this as your nervous system. You have a sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system. Think of this as your reptilian part of your brain. Think of this as your amygdala. We're going to call this the smoke detector, the part of you that looks for trauma. It's connected to your limbic system. And then let's call this your neocortex, and let's call this your prefrontal cortex. So to make it easy, think of prefrontal cortex as the part of your brain that has rational thought, okay, your executive function. Now, what happens when we get in an activated or traumatized state is we go offline. What happens is our brain goes offline. We lose our ability to have executive functioning or rational thought, and we move into fight or flight, which is in our reptilian brain. Our reptilian brain sends a signal and turns on our sympathetic nervous system. What that means is you get into a fight or flight place. So it could be a sound, a movement, a word. I know a trigger for me is just overwhelm for some reason. The definition of trauma is the body's reaction. So listen to this here. the body's reaction to a real or perceived physical or emotional threat. So it's the body's reaction to a real or perceived threat to the physical or emotional well-being. So think about that. Look, it could be overwhelm. It could be everything going on in what's going on with COVID right now. It could be your partner looking at you a certain way that triggers the body going, oh, somebody else looked at me this way, and it equals pain. It equals abandonment. It equals not enough. It could be a business partner, a loved one. Any number of things could trigger us, and we are now offline. When we are offline, we are not able to show up rational. So how does this land? I see a lot of men work busy all day, then they come home at night, and they've been maybe handling a bunch of emotional shit at work, whatever's going on. They come home and it's almost like their tank is full, or maybe they're already in a fight or flight state, and then they come home and something triggers this fight or flight response. A lot of men retreat or blow up. That's typically, we either fight, flight, or freeze. So if you fight, that means men just one little sign or one little thing and they attack. Something else happens and men retreat. So what we practice doing is, how do we learn to identify first that we may be in an activated place, or also identify that our spouse may be in an activated place? So what are the signs or symptoms that your spouse is activated? What are the signs and symptoms that you are activated? Because what that means is you're offline. You can't have rational thought. You're both acting from primitive brain, which is trying to survive. So if you know that going into it, it gives you so much ammo, because now you can show up and say, oh, I come home, had a tough day, I did something, spouse comes off at me, now I'm upset, and I go leave and retreat, which typically, this is how it's unpacked. Let's say I'm spouse A and my wound is not enough. Let's say spouse B is abandonment. I come home, really tough day, see my spouse. Let's say she's already offline. Something triggered her, the kids, the family, the environment, COVID, whatever it could be. She's offline. She's not conscious that she's offline. I walk in the door, and for some reason, unconsciously, she's in an activated place, not thinking rational, and can move into attack. As me, maybe my wound's not enough. I walk in saying, hey, how's the day? And she's upset. Did you do this? Did you get this done? Whatever the response is, or it's maybe it's a breath or a scowl or whatever happens, I'm now triggered, feeling not enough. And so I retreat and trigger her abandonment wound. And you see how this thing just loops and loops and loops and loops. So a woman's primary attraction to a man is his ability to self-regulate. This is the key, and this is from Eva Clay. She said it. I'll take that and run with it, because that's what we do as the primary training in my emotional resilience work, and a lot of the work I'm now integrating into Valor with first responders. But this is gold if you get it, because men, all you men out there who may have been thinking what we're doing is messy or uncomfortable or whatever it is, this is the work that's ninja, because here's why. And again, I'd love to hear, my soul sister, if this resonates, and anybody else that's on. How does this land for you if a man is able to be a mountain? If he is able to lean in when things are uncomfortable and regulate his own nervous system instead of bailing, instead of blowing up, if he's able to process it and still hold the boundary. It doesn't mean you take it. She clarified a couple things. She said, it doesn't mean you take it. If somebody's abusing you, you don't let them abuse you. You say, hey, boundary, don't communicate with me this way, or this is not okay. So you can lean in and set a boundary, because if you just take it, you're weak too. I'll give you that. If you just take it, you're weak. If you attack, you're weak, right? Those are both weak signs. But if you can self-regulate and go, oh, wow, she's in it, she's offline. How do I regulate my own nervous system? How do I calm her nervous system? Because we're both not in a rational place. If I get it, then I'm not triggered. I'm not upset, because what she's saying, she's offline. She's reacting in her 5-year-old state to some fight or flight experience that is not relevant today. If I can understand that, then I can lean into it and be like, she's offline. My girl wouldn't, my woman wouldn't do that if she was online. She's so loving and sweet and compassionate, and she's offline. How do I, maybe I lean in and, hey, do you need a hug? Or, whatever's going on. So I just wanted to share this, because she also said, whatever you do, don't leave. So what most men do is they attack and blow up, which builds distrust, or they leave, which also builds distrust. So this is just a message to all you men that are confused and don't understand the feminine. Don't worry, you're not alone. None of us do because we're not the feminine. But what I can say is there is wisdom in learning to be more of the mountain. There is wisdom in learning to regulate your own wounds. There is wisdom if you're not offline and you can be online, you can lean in more powerfully, more authentically. You can feel if you're being boundaries are crossed and communicate that. You can also feel if somebody really just needs some love and attention. You stop listening to what they're saying and you start feeling who they are, what their energy is, what they're expressing, what they're emoting, and you learn how to hold space, hold capacity, lean into that energy, and like hold space. But if you can't, here's the deal: if you can't hold space for yourself, there's no way you can hold space for your spouse or your partner or your girlfriend or whoever's in your life. And I'm speaking more to the masculine, feminine, just because this is primarily the lens that we see. But men, like this is a call to action. This is a challenge for you to learn to lean into your own wounds, to learn to stop. Because here's also the feedback Eva gave. She said, if you sit there and take it and then you go self-medicate, that doesn't do it either. Right? You're still coping. You're still not present. You're like, and I know it's confusing to us men. We're like these our energy's like here or here or here, and it's confusing. Like, oh, you want me to lean in and not solve? You want me to lean in and hold space? You want, like, it's a little confusing because as men we don't often do that. We're more questing or hunting or off to a quest, but it's a different skill set, and it takes masculine presence uh, combined with really gentle, which is, I think, a deeper level of owning your masculine is being able to sit into your uncomfortable areas. Joseph Campbell's famous quote, the cave you fear to enter contains the gold you seek, is so relevant in this conversation because I'm guessing you seek connection, you seek love, you seek a partner who sees you as a king, and encourages you to become the man you would be. Almost every man that I talk to behind the scenes, if he's in an amazing relationship, he'll say, man, when things are good, I'm so in love. And when things are bad, I question leaving. My question would be, what if you had the power to regulate? What if you had the power? What if you had the power to be that guiding ship, that guiding mountain that was how would I describe it? Let me think of it in a different context. Like, I feel the energy. I just want to communicate it in a way that lands. I think it's on the men. Let me flip the side. On the men's side, a lot of men are wishing, man, what if when I was triggered and wounded or off my kilter or had a tough day, my partner knew what to do. They were like, maybe they didn't say a word and just came up and started being being really gentle and loving, like, I'm here, I'm with you. Or some men need encouragement through words like, you got this, like you're going to rise again. So, like, I asked this question to the men. I'm like, what would it look like if your partner knew how to soothe you when you were in your most activated, triggered, wounded place? Like, what if they just knew what that looked like? What would that feel like? And a lot of the guys were like, they were imagining, like, oh man, what would that look like? And like we'd never even ask, what do I need? And then let's flip it. What would it look like if we could show up that way to our partner? What would it look like when they're most activated, most offline? We knew how to comfort them. And a big part of this is going to be, I think, as men, when a woman emotes, and I'm speaking more masculine, feminine, in case this isn't landing with you. This is what I know the most. A lot of times when a woman is emoting, as men, we take it personal, and it's like, because we want to be the king, we want to solve everything, we want to fix everything, we want to make all the solutions. So when a woman's emoting and kind of emptying her basket or what she's frustrated or upset about, a lot of times we take it so personal because we're like, she's upset at me because I didn't do those things and I failed, because a lot of our wounds are feeling not enough, or worried she's going to leave because of that. What if we could just transparent are that and just sit there, hold space, be the mountain, feel them, know that they're hurting, comfort them, not have to fix it. And the reason I'm speaking in is, to your point, Kevin, ideally, yeah, both partners can rock this. But what I find is chances are a lot of partners, I'm going to create a relationship course very soon on this, communicating through the wounds. And I'm really excited about it. I think your ability to stay together is your ability to regulate together, which is what's common. But in the interim, what do you do? What do you do if it's just you? What do you do if you're trying to do this? Like somebody has to lead. And that's why I'm bringing this to the men, because a lot of women, like I give so much credit to the feminine. You guys are so intuitive. Uh, I see women. I'll be honest. I see women doing more work than the men, and I think because in our nature, it's not in our nervous system. I think a lot of times there's a ton of men doing work. So I'm not taking away from the men, but I'll just put it this way: my emotion and resilience work, which specializes in this, I feel like it's so hard to enroll men in the REN that are really needing it come, or men that are open. But I get more women. I get 2 or 3 or 4 times as many women reaching out, wanting to do the work. And I guess that's where this observation comes from. Like, why are women usually so open and willing to do more work than men? If you look at the statistics, 70% of women are in personal development. So I'm now opening this up, not just to the men, because to me, if a man can lead through this, I think it's fucking epic. Excuse my language. But to me, that's the king. The king is serving. He's serving his spouse. He's serving his kids. He's not letting the wounds of his past destroy his current family. Like he's able to break those chains of the past in order to, you know, change his lineage. To me, that's kingly. That's epic, and it takes the ultimate courage. And the men that I see leading this, it's miracles for the feminine. The feminine is like, oh my gosh, like where does this come from, right? Because my experience is really doing deep emotion and resilience work. When you can lean into the feminine, you feel you're not actually listening. You're listening, you're present, you're watching, you're hearing the words, but you're watching, you're experiencing, you're taking the whole feminine in. You're going, what's her body language? What's she saying? What's her energy? What's her posture? Is she leaning up? Is she leaning down? Like, what is going? Let me feel her. And if you can actually feel her, you already know what she's feeling. You already feel intuitively what's going on. But we're usually in here, men, we're trying to operate from our head. We're trying to rationalize where we're headed because it's safe. This is safe. Logic, yes, no, right, wrong. This feels messy and uncomfortable where most of our wounds are. And so we unconsciously have learned to live in our heads because it's safe. Living in here requires us to open up our own capacity, learn to lean into our own wounds. And when we can love ourselves through our own wounds, we're not as triggered by our spouse's wounds. We're not as triggered by our children's wounds because we've learned to love our wounds. So we're like, I see the value. I'm here with me. I feel those pain and I'm here. I feel these wounds and I'm here. I feel the not enough and I'm here. I feel the abandonment and I'm here. I feel the shame and the grief or whatever it is. And I'm not leaving me. I'm not bailing on me. I can love through it. And so because I can love through it with me, I can love through it with you. Like to me, that is that balance. And so what would it look like for your kids to be able to hold space for them? What would it look like for, your spouse, your community? And also we only learn through experience. You can hear this all day long. It doesn't really land into you. You can hear it and say, oh yeah, this makes sense. Great. Now you get into a relationship and you get triggered and boom, you're attacking, you're blowing up, you're shutting down, you're freezing, you're doing all these trauma wounds. And that's where you do the work. But let's just say for a moment, you were able to lean into your spouse when they were highly activated and soothe them. Let's say the next time that they cross the line, because I see there's 2 types of men. There's the men that kind of destroy and attack is their coping mechanism. Let's say the next moment you went to go attack, you paused and you were able to regulate your own nervous system. And instead of attacking, you were able to be gentle and compassionate. You were able to understand their perspective, validate. Here's the key. You're able to validate your partner. That's what they're craving, validation. And most of the time you're invalidating them and putting them wrong because you feel not enough and you feel lack and you feel inadequate, so you put them down. Conversely, there's the other side of the spectrum of men who shut down and I would call it more on the weakling side. And these are men that kind of take everything and have no boundaries, and we put your partner above everything else. And on this side of the spectrum, it's the same thing. A man who destroys the woman, she doesn't respect him because she can't trust him because he's volatile. He's a bad boy. He's probably going to leave. He only cares about himself, a little bit more narcissistic, doesn't really care about her feelings, her emotions, doesn't validate her. On the flip side, there's the man that doesn't validate himself, right? Doesn't validate his own emotions, and she can't trust you either. So if you can sit there and lean in and she crosses a boundary, you need to be able to, in a loving way, put a line in the sand and say boundary. You like, please don't communicate like me like this. Like, what does that look like? But if you can't feel you, you can't feel how you need to be communicated to. You can't feel what your boundaries are. You can't communicate, I'm sorry. You can't communicate compassion. You can't be vulnerable because you still see vulnerability as a weakness. When you realize nobody can take, how to put this, when you really get that, when you own your wounds, nobody can take anything from you. Let me say that again. When you own you're not enough, when you own your abandonment, when you realize people can leave and you'll still be okay, when you realize you feel not enough and you're still okay, like when you really own that and can self-soothe yourself, when you can self-regulate yourself, when you can hold space for yourself without a shadow of a doubt and stop going to drugs and alcohol and porn and TV and all the different ways you fucking numb because you don't want to sit with yourself. When you can sit there with yourself and be there with yourself, it's a whole game change. The whole world changes. And you now realize, like, wow, I can be there with me. It's self-love. Ultimate might drop in self-love. And when you can self-love yourself, you can self-love everyone else. And you can show them through your actions, through your beingness, how to hold space. You lean in and love them and hold space. But if you can't feel you, you don't know your boundary, you get walked all over. And then you're a victim. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. Why is everybody doing this to me? When you hold a boundary, you're like, boundary, don't cross it. Because you can feel, that hurt. And you can actually be vulnerable enough to say, that hurt. That hurt, boundary. Instead of attack, because that's what we usually do is you attack. And when you attack, it's because you're hurt, but you can't feel the fact that you're hurt. So you attack to protect and run away or do some other thing instead of going like, hurt. This is what hurt. And now your spouse goes, oh, wow, now I see what hurt you. That wasn't my intent. I was in my wounds. I didn't realize I'm protecting and my coping mechanism hurt you. Oh, wow, now I need to look at that. So if you can lead with compassion, if you can lead with gentleness, if you can lean in and be gentle, you show the way, you lead the way because you're self-aware. You're realized, you have the level of conscious awareness to respond versus react. You have a conscious level of awareness to identify and experience what's going on in your nervous system real time, presently, and your spouse's nervous system real time, presently. If you're hurt, if they're hurting, like you have the self-aware to be present. Like that's the piece. Majority of people are living in their wounds from a past or future state. They're unconsciously triggered in their wounds from their past and replaying their past now with the partner, and their whole wounds has nothing to do with now. They're in their past, or they're projecting a future they're afraid of or scared of. And so they're afraid to be left or abandoned, or they're wounded now. And if those are the crux of this, then you're not present. You're repeating relationships and running, or you're repeating relationships and blowing things up because you don't have the present level of awareness to lean in and feel, regulate, and lead. So that's on my my little rant today on a woman's primary attraction to a man is his ability to self-regulate. So men, mount up. Let's start self-regulating, man. Let's make this the new movement. It's not about how to describe it. I think that lands, and I'd love to hear from the women that are listening. If this resonates, love to hear your feedback. Men, it sounds like you're already getting some feedback that this is landing as well. So I'm passionate about the subject. I do a lot of work around this. It's the same work that we do to heal our grief, same tools, our loss, our childhood wounds. This is what I'm teaching first responders to actually learn how to identify their own emotional trauma. So just wanted to share this. I'm deep into this world, and I find you can use it every day with your partner, with your spouse, with your kids, and with yourself. And so, and I thought it was amazing that Eva Clay, who I'll tag in here, shared this is a primary attraction to man. So thank you, everyone. I hope everybody has a blessed day. So good to see everybody on here. I'm trying out this new software, so I'm going to be using this daily and doing more rants. So appreciate everybody. Everybody have a blessed day. It seemed like this was working okay, and we'll chat soon.